Hey guys, this is Fran.
And this is Mehdi.
Welcome back to Total Tactics Football. So today on episode
Right.
7, we had another match from Real Madrid. You could say it's almost like a copy and paste from the last game. It was a 1-0 win versus Athletic Club Bilbao. How was the game for you, Mehdi?
Right, they've gone 7 points clear of Barcelona with a game in hand. That is very crucial at this moment. Right now, it's about winning. Taking the 3 points. Nothing else matters. It's going to be a bit gritty. It's going to be not beautiful necessarily, but it's about getting the 3 points. And what the most important thing is, and I think this consistency is the defensive consistency that Real Madrid have been providing. So, Fran, to start off this topic, this debate today, what have you seen? What did you see today that is also like goes, and you can see this in the consistency over this period since the post-lockdown. What do you feel like what Real Madrid is doing right?
Yeah, so I think one thing that's been essential, to us picking up these results is realistically us continuing that kind of run of defensive form. You know, this Real Madrid side has obviously proven to many people, and you can see it with, for example, Courtois' clean sheets, just the low amount of goals conceded this season, that this team is really kind of foundational upon a defensive structure that Zidane has set up, and the leader of that structure realistically is Sergio Ramos, who holds the line. And what's interesting for me is that most people see the best duo as clearly Ramos and Varane. And
Yeah.
when I watched Militao at different times this season, he did seem slightly uncomfortable, and he doesn't seem to have held the line so well. And I think today he played a fantastic match. What do you think about his game today?
I think today he was reassuring. The big money that Real Madrid have spent on him, and there were a few doubts this season that will he be able to, in time be ready, considering if one of the players get injured, like Varane gets injured in the last game, or in case there was a decline in Ramos's, ability. Considering his age as well, and mostly it happens sometimes, a decline comes faster than one perceives. But the player that I think Real Madrid were looking for is right there, and he showed it today. He was like a leader today in the back. He kept his shape. He was there as the last man to help Ramos in case when Ramos had to go a bit out to cover for Marcelo's the
Yeah.
gap Marcelo left when he moved forward, and Militao was marshaling that defense. And I feel like there's a potential. One day, maybe you might even see some leadership. Like maybe he might be considered for captaincy. I know this is a very big long shot, but I'm talking about when you're in the game and you're commanding a game. Um, that was fantastic on behalf of Eder Militao. He has the pace, he has the strength, and also on the ball. On the ball, he looks composed. He doesn't look erratic on the ball, and I think that's
Hmm.
very important when you're playing. You're a strong defensive unit. You need to be sure on that defense. Uh, but no, for me, I think Militao was superb today. He would be my man of the match, to be honest. And now this is interesting because Varane's out and Militao with such a good performance, they don't need to rush Varane back. That means he can take his time, get recovered, and then they can ease him in back because Militao has, shown today that he is more than capable of taking that role.
Yeah, I certainly agree. I think the biggest thing that I saw from him today was how composed he was with passing. Usually he's slightly erratic with kind of making a pass from the back, and it's always quite scary because not all defenders, grow up learning how to pass from the back, right? They're
Yeah,
usually just seen as, classically trying to take on one-on-ones and make sure that they don't get wrong-footed, right? But
right.
a world-class center back now needs to pass from the back, and he's shown he has the confidence and the composure as well to do that. And what I love about Militao mostly is his agility, really, and his ability to change directions, very similar to Ramos. So I think he would be a key replacement for Ramos in the future, and he just needs to keep improving. So another key thing that I think contributes to that kind of defensive solidity in the team is the kind of midfield presence that Real Madrid have built. I
Yeah,
think a lot of
definitely.
it is underpinned this season by the emergence of Valverde, the Uruguayan wonder kid who has shown that he's a great box-to-box midfielder and someone who's able to actually play and fill in the role of someone like Toni Kroos, who actually sat out today as Valverde started.
That's what's very interesting about the player. Like, we know he has the athleticism, we know he has the physical presence there to, to boss that midfield, to run up and down for 90 minutes. But when you watch him today, his progression of the ball, not just carrying, his progression of the ball through his passes are are very smooth. His passes don't look like he's overhit them. He looks like someone who you could even play in a creative role. And I know
Hmm.
that's not his role, but that's what's beautiful, is that this kid is so talented that he can play the roles that today you can allow to sit Kroos out of the game and actually let him play a role where he provides you that passing ability as well. Yes, maybe he doesn't have the long range compared to what Kroos does, but most of the rest of the stuff, I think he is more than capable. And I think over the season there was a lot of worries. Real Madrid's central midfield depth was they're quite short. I mean, we know Casemiro doesn't have a backup, and Modric is aging, and Toni Kroos last season wasn't at his best, and there were worries. But looking this season, the way you guys have, where Real Madrid have maintained, taken care of Modric. They've utilized him correctly. They've not overused him, exerted him because of his age. They're using him appropriately. Valverde has come in. Casemiro is undroppable, and Kroos has seemed to find his um, own old form. And I think today you could see that it's just the way you hold the ball, the way your defense and your midfield is connected. I feel like the whole team feels comfortable. Even when
Yeah.
you attack and someone loses the ball up front, you can be a bit more risky up front. But you know that you have those people in the midfield and defense so well connected that the team doesn't feel like it's this, they're not worried about it. Um, what do you think? Like, how do you feel about Valverde and Modric? I feel like you were talking about him, and he's been in the not been in the limelight much this season, but he is definitely, like, you could see him today. He was so important.
Yeah, I think Modric actually showed a lot of key moments early in the season when he was, being put on as a substitute almost late in the game and was able to create, when he was a fresh player and, had stronger legs basically over the kind of other midfielders that he'd be competing against. But what's been interesting for me from the post-lockdown break is, for a 34-year-old, you mentioned his age. I mean, Modric has played absolutely fantastic. He played 90 minutes today. He played 70, 80 minutes in the last game. It's shocking to me that someone at his age is able to put out the kind of performances he has. And these are games where we've I think Real Madrid has only had 48 hours of break, and Zidane has trusted him
Yes.
to play a full 90 minutes, and he's running up and down. I remember there was a DeMarcos chance. He was a substitute for Athletic Bilbao,
Yeah.
and he even managed to kind of press back and go into the box and hunt for a second recovery. And it's just amazing to me that the Croatian is able to do that at this age. Going
I
back
mean,
to Valverde, of course, he does the same realistically. When you compare him to Toni Kroos, who he was playing instead of today, the main thing that I think differentiates them is he's able to work for those kind of recoveries, and it does somewhat shield players like, for example, let's say if Modric wants to make a run, he's able to cover that kind of space in behind very well, and he's very tactically astute in understanding that Casemiro isn't going to be the only person who you know can
needs to
recover all
defend.
the balls, and it's just surprising to me because he's very incisive both up the field and down the field.
I would like to add just one little thing. I mean, yes, they only had 48 hours, but think about the heat that they're playing in.
Exactly.
This is an after 2 p.m. kickoff. It's summertime. It's July in Spain. It's not easy, and considering all that and playing only, like, less than 72 hours, it's a very impressive. But moving on from there, there are some still in the game. You could see that there are still some things that Zidane needs to fill, Zidane needs to fix on. First, we're going to talk about Marcelo, who was crowned as the man of the match.
Hmm.
But I personally felt that there are some, I mean, which have always been around. Um, there were the attacks that Athletic Bilbao in the first half were coming down definitely from his side, and that's because Marcelo would go forward to attack to contribute in the final third, which he was great in today. But as we know, it leaves a hole in the back. Um, what do you feel? What do you think about that? Like, I mean, how does obviously Zidane knows about this too. So
Yeah, I think when you put it in context, it's interesting to me. Of course, Mendy and Marcelo, they both possess very vastly different styles. Mendy is someone who shows a lot of work rate. He is very much like Alphonso Davies, but a more defensive version of that, where he has that kind of ability to push up and down the field constantly. He has the pace, and he also has the kind of strength that most fullbacks don't have. And in contrast, obviously, Marcelo, we understand, is someone who has fantastic composure, and most people consider him to be someone who is able to play in almost any corner of the pitch, realistically, because of how good he is as a player. And he obviously mirrors someone like Dani Alves, who performs so well in the right back position for Barcelona. Now, obviously, on the tail end of his career, he's no longer able to kind of track back as much, and that is a problem. But I think the reason why Zidane played Marcelo is because Mendy had a slightly poor game for Getafe, and he sees it as an opportunity to, play, for example, a more offensive game today,
yeah.
especially when he starts with Asensio. I think Vinicius actually gives a lot of work rate, and that's an underrated element that I think he's added to his game. And when you see Asensio playing, I think there's definitely a little bit of weakness on the left, as you mentioned, in the first half in terms of being able to track back and peg the wingers from Athletic Bilbao back.
No, and that's definitely right, because in the first half we had Asensio more on the touch line, and Marcelo was sort of playing as an inverted wing back, and he would be
Hmm.
quite ahead of him. And I guess that's where it was, because Asensio couldn't track back to cover for Marcelo. And it's, you're right. Like, it's unfair to also give a bit of criticism to Marcelo, because look, you're playing a whole season. There's a lot of games to play for. Many can't play every all the games. Marcelo contributes to the team. Yes, you will have some sort of, lapses. You're still forming partnerships. Asensio was trying out. I was a bit personally, I was a bit surprised. I thought he might have been a bit on the right side. He would have started on the right, but Rodrigo, uh, Zidane wanted to continue to play Rodrigo in the same position that he's played, and from there, like who we'll get to in a minute. I do think Marcelo, it's to have him even as a backup left back to cover for Mendy when he's not there, and with his experience, with his technical ability, and the defense that you have behind him with
Hmm.
Ramos, Varane, Militao, Casemiro protecting him, it allows him to even be in those games where sometimes it doesn't work out. That your defense is there to help out. But we'll now talk about Rodrigo. What did you make of his game today? Do you think he took his chance today?
Yeah, I mean, I think he had a massive chance, in the first half early on in the
Yeah,
game, and he didn't take it. But I think, that's very akin to a young player who's not established a starting position in a top team.
of
I think
course.
sometimes you're going to run into games where you feel a bit lost because you're not, a consistent part of the lineup, and you're going to try and overthink plays. I kind of remember, Sadio Mane, for example, when he was trying to establish himself into the Liverpool team and the Liverpool side, he was always very erratic in the box. I think he always questioned his decisions. Sometimes you wanted him to cut back to his teammates like Salah and Firmino, or you wanted him to be a bit more incisive and take a shot. And I can see that somewhat here with Rodrigo, who is obviously still a young, talented player, but
100%.
didn't take his chances today, and it's a bit unfortunate. But I think he showed the hunger when, on the second half, he seemed to improve his touches, improve his dribbles as well, and he even opened himself up to a second chance where he was close to having a one-on-one with the keeper. And what I do like, however, on the right side that Rodrigo does provide is the kind of triangle that he creates with Benzema and Carvajal. It actually opened up a few chances on a flank that I think Madrid usually doesn't attack through. You'll notice this season, if you look at the statistics, Madrid actually plays mostly offensively through the left, and that's even with Mendy on the left sometimes, and mostly with Hazard, right, or Vinicius.
Yeah,
But it's good to see that there is a player there, but he definitely needs to improve, and we do see a lack of depth in that position.
and that's what it is, isn't it? Because, I mean, Carval's the only real attacking threat at the moment. I mean, that's again,
Yeah.
I'm like understating a lot of the players, but consistent threat. I would like to,
Hmm.
correct myself. And definitely, this is a position where I think Real Madrid need to look. I mean, your defense and your midfield has been solid enough to let you hopefully win the title the way you're going. It looks likely. You probably have one hand on right now, but next season where the other teams will also strengthen, and we're talking about like European competition stuff, there is definitely a place where they really need to strengthen to be like consistently strong on that side. So because having only one side, like you said, um, can become predictable, and if those days when that side doesn't work, it can be a bit difficult. And Real Madrid can thank their stars that they have Benzema and Ramos right now, who can score out of anything. And Ramos's numbers also shows that too. But definitely, I think if the right side is somewhere. What kind of players mold? What kind of player would you be looking for on that right hand side?
It's interesting because I think if Hazard or Vinicius are playing as well as they do and are able to play their best, I think you want to see a right winger who can somewhat play off the ball slightly. And someone like Rodrigo definitely works out very well, but I would like to see maybe a bit of a try given to someone like Kubo to bring him back into the team,
Yeah, that's a good shout.
because I think the most lethal side and the most lethal aspect about Real Madrid is that even though you have Hazard and Vinicius, operating so much of the ball, if you have someone like Benzema, he can bring in a right winger to the game, right? And,
Yeah,
and we did mention the triangle. So that still allows you to bring in a creative and technical player. And from what I've seen this season, Kubo has actually had much more starts, than someone like Rodrigo. And, he's not out of favor like someone like Bale, and he's not aging like someone like Vasquez. Kubo has a clearly very high and talented ceiling. He's
yeah,
obviously captured the admiration of a lot of Japanese fans, which is obviously a big target for a club like Real Madrid, who are also a very commercial club in nature. And I think
exactly.
he'd be a fantastic player because he shows that he's able to take players on uh, in the Liga sides. You saw him in his last match versus Atletico Madrid. He played exceptionally well. He was able to dribble through his defenders, and he was still able to make those threaded through ball passes that I think is essential for a team like Real Madrid who wants to create as much chances as possible.
Well, Barcelona won't be happy about that, unfortunately.
No, they won't.
No, they won't. But to finish up on this, again, there was another controversy. For some people, media talked, is Real Madrid relying on, VAR? Is this, favoring them? Zidane came out with a strong response saying that no, this is not right. This is unfair. Unfair criticism to his team, to Real Madrid in general. Um, would you like to add some words to that?
Yeah, so I think the key thing is you've seen this kind of narrative spun by the Spanish media that Real Madrid are getting a lot of their wins through controversial refereeing decisions. And we've obviously seen it, and I think that they're definitely debatable. I remember a few disallowed goals, for example, in the early matches from the lockdown. And then obviously in the last match versus Getafe, there was a contact by Carvajal, in the Real Madrid defensive third, and people were kind of raising eyes about, refereeing decisions. I think what it comes down to realistically, if we're being honest, is if you look at all the top clubs over the world and over the different leagues, big clubs usually get the decisions from the refs. And that might be something that's not exclusive to Real Madrid. So I think the narrative should really move away from, is Real Madrid a club that gets a lot from refereeing decisions? And maybe we should move into looking at, should referees in general try not to play to the cards of the big teams?
I think you might have a point there, and I do feel um, a lot of other teams get advantages like that. Like Man United have had a lot of penalties this season. Oh, we can't argue and say that they didn't necessarily deserve it, but one can question maybe some lighter penalties are given, some aren't not given. What is the reason behind it that made the stronger teams, the more dominant teams, always tend to? It could be the pressure, it could be that the referees. But I mean, now we have VAR. I think it's still growing, it's learning. I think hopefully this summer they can review it, they can look
Hmm.
back and see, okay, there are some issues where they can improve upon. But like today, like Ramos, it was not a foul. It was unintentional. It was just an accident, and there wasn't an accident like in the way where he was going towards him. It's just he's walking back and he stepped on someone's foot. He slipped. It's harsh. Thank God. they weren't punished for that. And I mean, it's also a bit harsh on Athletic Bilbao, because they would be like, no, because there's contact. But I hope we can clear out some of these rules. There needs to be more of a direct communication. Referees, it's a hard job. It's a very hard job, and I think they need to be supported a bit as well.
Yeah, and certainly I think just to finalize on this, of course, you mentioned Zidane was very stern today in this press conference, and he said that more respect should be given to the players, right? Ultimately,
Yeah,
you can see the Real Madrid side, and Sergio Ramos was their leader. He hasn't been phased by it, and I think that's
no,
just how things should be seen. A top club
100.
like Real Madrid will get wins and they will get victories, and at the end of the day, it comes down to the work of the players.
It is, and they can't let the media right now display of what they're doing. Like Zidane said, as long as it mathematically guarantee that they haven't won the thing, they will not stop fighting, and that's exactly what they need to keep doing. They need to keep fighting, and maybe they'll get the title very soon.